This trip across the Alps will lead you from the Verdon gorges in the Provence Prealps to the Mont-Blanc summits in Haute-Savoie. This vast mountain range appeared 60 million years ago during the Tertiary era. It probably results from the confrontation between the European and the African tectonic plates. The pressure on the Earth's crust made the Alps rear up and caused the folding of the Prealps. 2 million years ago, the 4 consecutive glaciations of the Quaternary era redefined the geography of the Alps. The constant movement of the glaciers bored valleys, thus isolating the mountain ranges. During the ice thawing, glaciers melted and rivers appeared, running down the valleys where men decided to settle. However, the living conditions were difficult, and the landscape and climate curbed the economic development of the Alps. Breeding and forestry were the only resources for a long time. In the evolution of the economy of the Alps, 2 main stages can be defined. First, the exploitation of hydroelectric power, which has benefited the lower valleys since the end of the 19th century. And second, snow, which used to penalize the area and able to develop tourism during the second half of the 20th century. With a growing interest in winter sports, snow turned out to be a valuable resource for the higher valleys. In winter, the mountains are synonymous with leisure, pleasure, and skiing in the Alps. In summer, other leisure sports are available, such as paragliding, hang gliding, walking, trekking, cycling, hiking, or canyoning. If tourism is essential for the economy of the Alps, traditional activities are nonetheless important. Breeding, and especially the impressive transhumances, punctuate the seasons. Thus, around Saint-Jean's Day, sheep from Lower Provence leave for the mountain pastures of the Hautes-Alpes seeking lush meadows. If nowadays trucks are most commonly used for transportation, the last stages are still done in a traditional way, under the lead of a shepherd and his dogs. The trek back to the mountain pastures takes place around Saint-Michel's Day in a festive atmosphere. At the Grand Bornand, in the mountain range of the Aravis, Reblochon, a typical farm cheese is still made in the traditional way. Breeders from Savoie most probably invented this 500-gram cheese in order to reduce the tax due to the lords on pastry products. Cheese with low cream content was used to pay this tax, while peasants kept secret the recipe of creamy Reblochon. To be awarded the farm-made seal, all the manufacturing stages, from the milking stage to the maturing stage, must be accomplished on the farm. Not only are traditional activities safeguarded, but the necessity to create protected areas for the fauna, the flora, and the various places of interest of the Alps also imposed itself. That is why 2 national parks were created. Between the high valleys of the Isère River and the Arc River lies the Park of La Vanoise, spreading on 53,000 hectares of land. Created in 1963, it was the first French national park to see the day. The Park of the Ecrins, with its 92,000 hectares, is the widest French national park. 1/3 of its surface is located in Isère and 2/3 in the Hautes-Alpes. It owes its name to the Ecrins Ridge, which is 4,102 meters high. These parks are protected, but it does not mean that their access is forbidden to tourists. Just a few rules have to be followed, such as no fishing, no hunting, no flower picking, no camping, and no cycling. The Verdon's Grand Canyon spreads out on 21 kilometers between Rougon, downstream from Castellane, and Eguines near Sainte Croix Lake. The crossing of the Verdon River through the hard limestone of the Provence Pre-Alps remains a mystery. It is assumed that during the Tertiary era, the late folding of the Pre-Alps slowly lifted up the ground while the river kept its original course. Sinking deep into the natural cracks, the river formed a sinuous corridor from 250 to 700 meters deep. 2 scenic routes border the river's course. At the exit of the gorges, the Sainte Croix Dam, built in 1974, is one of the hydroelectric equipment of the Verdon. Along with the Durance River Dam, they represent an essential complement to nuclear power production. Sainte Croix Lake also enables water distribution in a great part of Provence. In summer, the lake becomes an important asset for tourism. Near Sainte Croix Lake, the village of Moustiers-Sainte-Marie is one of the most remarkable villages in France. Nestled at the feet of limestone cliffs, it was, during the 17th and 18th century, the Provence capital of earthenware. The church, provided with a bell tower characteristic of the Lombard Romanesque style, presents elements of the architecture from the 12th century to the 14th century. Sisteron, located on the gorge of the Durance River, is the gateway between Dauphiné and Provence. During Roman times, Sisteron was one of the stopping places on the Dominican route which linked Italy to the Rhone Delta. Cathedral town during the 4th century, royal land during the 12th century, Protestants and Catholics fought over Sisteron. It is during this period that an engineer named Jean Hérard made the plans for the current citadel. Built on the location of an 11th century castle, the most ancient parts of the building are the dungeon and the covered way, which date back to the 12th century. In 1692, Vauban came to inspect the citadel and made plans for new improvements that were never carried out. Northern of Sisteron and the Durance Valley, at 1,441 meters high, the Festre Pass offers a magnificent panoramic view of the Dévoluy Massif. A few kilometers north of the pass, the isolated church of Saint-Didier, called the Mother Church, dates from the 13th century. On the east side of the massif, the Noyer Pass, at a height of 1,664 meters, makes it possible to pass from the arid crests of the Dévoluy to the high valleys of the Drac in southern Champsaur, and finally to the bocage landscapes of the Gap Basin. When in Gap, the eye is caught by the Vieux Chaillol, which is 3,163 meters high. North of Gap, perpendicular to the Drac River, the valley of Valgaudemar penetrates deep into the Ecrins massif. A picturesque scenic route borders the course of the Sevres River. After the first few kilometers, the Olin summit, which culminates at 3,564 meters, is visible. Numerous waterfalls border this verdant and steep-sided valley. One of the strongest times of the rally Alpes Rétro, an annual gathering of ancient car owners, is the ascent to the Chalet Hotel of Joux-Bernet. As you go up, the landscape changes, trees transform into prairies, whortleberry trees, and masses of fallen rocks. Located at an altitude of 1,700 meters in a beautiful mountain cirque, the Joux-Bernet Chalet is located next to the famous waterfall of the Bride's Veil. It is one of the starting points for treks in the Ecrins National Park. The Serre-Ponçon Lake, which is located about 20 kilometers east of Gap on the Durance River's course, is one of the biggest artificial lakes in Europe. Spreading over 3,000 hectares, it is 20 kilometers long and has a capacity of 1,270,000,000 cubic meters. It was created in 1960. Built to regulate the course of the Durance River, it enables the annual production of 700 million kilowatts per hour. This vast lake has become a major site for tourism in the Hautes-Alpes. The Chevalier Peaks, at a height of 2,403 meters, stand on the right bank of the lake. In winter, skiing is possible in the Réalon ski resort. On the left bank, you will find the Chalaisienne de Boscolon Abbey, built in 1130. It was demolished during the French Revolution and became a farm building. Since 1972, the abbey is owned by an association which worked at renovating it. With an altitude of 2,327 meters, the Grand Morgon dominates the abbey and the lake. It is a classic for hikers. On the right bank of the Durance River, located on a natural headland of 80 meters high, the city of Embrun dominates the lake's source. During Roman domination, Embrun was an important administrative center, which then became an archbishopric until the French Revolution. Above Embrun, overhanging the confluence of the Durance and the Guil, the Mont Dauphin citadel used to be an important site of the Alps during the 17th century. Imagined by Vauban by order of Louis XIV, it was supposed to prevent the victorious raid of 1692 from happening again. At the time, the attack had led Gap and the Embrun country to the hands of the Duke of Savoy. The ascent of the Guil course, going by Château Queyras, leads to the core of the Queyras Regional Park. Saint-Véran is the highest village in Europe. Its houses are located between 1,990 meters and 2,040 meters of altitude. Originally, as most villages in Queyras, the living part of the chalets, as well as the cowsheds, are made out of stone. Barns are made of wood. To avoid fire, the village was divided into autonomous areas, isolated one from another. Wood fountains, crosses bearing symbolic elements of the Passion of Christ, sundials, and so on, are numerous testimonies of popular art in Queyras. The climate in Queyras is exceptional with more than 300 days of sun per year. The flora benefits from these weather conditions, and with a census of 2,000 species, it attracts many botanists every year. In winter, which lasts 7 months, the Isoire Pass and the Aniel Pass are closed. Located in Italy, the Mont Viso, which culminates at an altitude of 3,841 meters, dominates the upper cirque of the Gill, last extremity of the Queyras. Saint-Véran, as every other ski resort in Queyras, is well appreciated by sun lovers and Nordic ski fanatics. Fort Queyras has been a defensive site since the 14th century. Its military architecture was modified by Vauban at the end of the 17th century. Going upstream the course of the Durance, between Mont-Dauphin and Briançon, the Fournel Valley, near L'Agentière-la-Bessée, is renowned for its ice waterfalls. An international meeting of high-level ice climbers takes place every year. The Valois Valley, a few kilometers from the Fournel Valley, was given this name during the 15th century in honor of Louis XI. This valley, bordered by a tributary of the Durance River, is provided with a ski resort, Puy Saint-Vincent, which has contributed to the development of tourism. The ski domain enables to benefit from beautiful views on the Pelvoux Massif. The Valoise is one of the gateways to the Ecrins National Park. Further upstream the Durance River, at the crossing of the Guisane, the Cerverette, and the Claret valleys, Briançon has always been a strategic and military town. It is also Vauban who conceived the current fortification, the citadel having kept its appearance since the time of Louis XIV. A ring of fortifications stands on the heights of Briançon. It is the highest town in Europe at an altitude of 1,321 meters. The ski resort of Serre-Chevalier adds another asset to the historical assets of Briançon. Thus, it is possible to put your ski shoes on in town and take the ProRail cable car, which links the town to the resort. The Serre-Chevalier domain is a vast area for all winter sports. In summer, the Mediterranean colors of the Briançon citadel stand out. Water flows in the open canalization on the Grande Rue, called the waterspout. The Cordelier Church, which dates from the 14th century, is decorated with remarkable interior frescoes. The Claret Valley, also called the Nevache Valley, is one of the most beautiful valleys in the Briançonnais. Narrow, run through by the Claret torrent, the valley has timeless charm. The fact that there are no ski lifts and the succession of marvelously well-preserved chapels and churches make the reputation of the Nevache Valley. the Plampinay village, the Saint-Sébastien church, with its rustic appearance, is decorated with a fine sundial. Inside you will find rich frescoes, probably realized by a Piedmontese artist in 1530, which give the church a subtle charm. In the rows, 19 scenes evoke the Passion of Christ. At the exit of the Guisane Valley, after Serre-Chevalier, the Lotharie Pass, at an altitude of 2,057 meters, separates the Southern Alps from the Northern Alps. "20 kilometers from the pass, going towards Bourg, the traditional Chazelet bovine fair still takes place. Traditionally, transactions between owners and dealers are done on the basis of each party giving his or her word. From the Chazelet Oratory, overlooking the village of La Grave, the panorama on the Mégève and its glaciers is striking. Culminating at 3,983 meters of altitude, the Mégève constitutes, with the Ecrins Ridge, one of the mythical summits of the Ecrins National Park. In summer, the ascent of the Ecrins Ridge through the White Glacier requires an excellent knowledge and practice of mountaineering. It is advised to accomplish this hike with a local high mountain guide. With a lot of perspicacity, you will be able to observe the frolics of the fawns with complete freedom. During the ascent, it is possible to benefit from nice views on the Pelvoux. When reaching the projecting ledge of the glacier, the goal is far from being achieved. A stop at the Ecrins shelter enables to go on towards the dome or the Ecrins Ridge on the second day. In the resort of Les Deux Alpes, the ridge and the massif of the Ecrins take on a different face. Les Deux Alpes ski resort, being located on a high-altitude glacier, 3,568 meters at the Lowe's Dome, it is possible to ski in all seasons, even during the summer. Facing Les Deux Alpes ski resort, another major resort, l'Alpe d'Huez. L'Alpe d'Huez is also located at a high altitude above the tree line. From the White Lake Peak, at an altitude of 3,327 meters, the panorama is spectacular. The ski resort, located at an altitude of 1,860 meters, dominates the Bourg basin of more than 1,000 meters. The Romanche River, frequently covered with smog, links the Oisans to Grenoble. Grenoble, a modern, university and industrial city of 160,000 inhabitants, spreads along the meanders of the Isère River. The town is completely surrounded by mountains. West of the town begin the high limestone plateaus of Vercors with the Moucherotte cliffs. Spreading on 135,000 hectares on the Isère and Drôme regions, The regional natural park of Vercors benefits from an exceptional fauna and flora. In winter, it is particularly well adapted for Nordic skiing. A few kilometers south of Villard-de-Lans, not far from Côte de Mille ski resort, the impressive cliffs of the Grande Moucherotte culminate at an altitude of 2,284 meters. East of Grenoble, the Verdon Massif dominates the Isère plain. Among its many ski resorts, Chamonix and Lissetlo. The summits of Verdon rise at an altitude ranging from 2,000 to 3,000 meters. Facing Verdon, the Chartreuse Massif stretches out from Grenoble to Chambéry. Smallest and most discrete massif of the Pre-Alps, its slopes are asymmetrical and smooth, wooded in the west and more abrupt in the east. The highest crests reach 2,000 meters. It is hard not to be seduced by the charm of the ever-changing landscape. At the heart of a thick fir forest, a few rudimentary cabins were built in 1084, which later became the monastery of the Grande Chartreuse. The Chartreuse, liquor made of 130 plants, used to be distilled in the monastery. Today, the distillation is done in the town of Véran. It is not possible to visit the monastery. The northern extremity of the Chartreuse Massif is marked by the Granier Mount and the Désert d'Entremont ski resort. At the feet of the Dent du Chat, the Bourget lake is forever associated to the famous rhymes of Lamartine. One evening, do you remember, we were sailing in silence, hearing over the waters and beneath the heavens only the distant rhythmic beat of oarsmen on your harmonious waves. O time, suspend your flight, and you, fortunate hours, stay your journey. Let us savor the fleeting delights of our days. While French kings are buried at Saint-Denis, princes and princesses of la Maison de Savoie are buried at the Royal de Hautecombe-Herby, located on a promontory on the Bourget Lake. Located several kilometers south of the lake, Chambéry became in 1232 the capital of the Counts of Savoie and remained a sovereign state until the 16th century. Its castle, modified during the 14th, 15th, and 18th century, shelters the Sainte Chapel with its Baroque pediment. At the feet of the castle lies the old town with its colored 17th and 18th century facades. The Elephant Fountain, built in 1838 in memory of General Count of Boigne, is most certainly the most popular monument in the town. The Savoyards also call it the Fountain of the Four Without Bottoms. About 20 kilometers east of Chambéry, dominating by 200 meters the Savoie Combe, the castle of Mont-Blanc is a superb example of the Middle-Age military architecture. Its location served to supervise the Bauges, the Tarentaise and the Maurienne roads. Watching over the Savoie Combe, dominating the confluence of the Arly River and the Isère River, the fortified city of Conflans is today a district of Albertville. Since 1750, with the damming up of the Isère and Arly rivers, the inhabitants of Conflans have migrated to the safer and more salubrious plain. Thus, the setting and the Middle-Age houses have kept their original state. The Conflans church was rebuilt during the 18th century in continuity with the religious Baroque burst which marked Savoie. The interior design cost more than twice the price of the church. Charles Albert, King of Sardinia, Duke of Savoie, created Albertville in 1836. This small 17,000 inhabitant borough went down in history on February 8, 1992 at 5 p.m. after the lighting of the Olympic flame. During 15 days, the 16th Winter Games transformed Albertville into a media capital. Today, the infrastructures set up for the organization of the Games benefit the entire Savoie region. Consequently, the speed skating oval has been transformed into a racetrack. The ice skating rink enables the practice of many sports and the organization of concerts. The access to the Tarentaise ski resorts, where were held many events during the Games, was facilitated. These 15 days are still in all memories. About 20 kilometers from Moustiers, Courchevel, in the Sainte Valley, is the beginning of the Three Valleys ski domain. Gigantic, this domain is the biggest in the world. Discovered in 1925 by a British expedition seeking ski slopes, the site received its first tourist installations in 1930. The Dent de Bourget separates the Sainte Valley from the Allu Valley, enabling the skier to access the Motaré and the Merveilles ski resorts at the heart of the Three Valleys. From the Roc des Trois Marches, between the Allu and Belleville valleys, the panorama covers the entire skiable domain of the Three Valleys and further. The many summits, resembling ocean waves, let themselves be contemplated with fascination. The exerted eye will recognize the characteristic indents of the Mégève and the Rateau behind the Vanoise Massif and the Maurienne Valley. Let us go down towards the Menuire and Val Thorens resorts to finish our tour in the largest ski domain with the Belleville Valley. In High Tarentaise, Bourg-Saint-Maurice is linked to its ski resort, Les Arcs, by a funicular. This resort, where ski jumping took place during the Games, was the cradle for new snow sensations in the 80s. A group of fanatics from the Arcs made many discover the joys of snowboarding by producing a movie known in the entire world, Apocalypse Snow. The accommodation facilities, harmoniously integrated to the landscape, are set up in 3 terraces: Arc 1600, Arc 1800, and Arc 2000. At an altitude of 2,100 meters at the feet of the Grande Motte, Tignes is located at the extreme end of the Tarentaise Valley. Created in 1957, Tignes, highest resort in France, received one of the ski events during the Albertville Winter Games. The old part of the village is lost underneath the waters of an artificial lake whose dam is decorated with a giant, painted by Jean-Marie Pierret. At the bottom of a steep-sided valley where the Isère takes its source, Val d'Isère enjoys an international reputation. Jean-Claude Killy, a native of the area, organizer of the Olympic Games, gave his name to a vast ski domain linking Tignes to Val d'Isère. The Espace Killy is the kingdom of great skiing. The Tarentaise Valley, as well as the entire Savoie region, has known a great religious revival since the 17th century. After the Council of 30, the Catholic Church, threatened by the Reformation, uses all its resources in art to express the presence of the sacred in religious buildings. Baroque churches flourish. In the image of the Haute-Sille-Gondon Church, their interior design is exuberant: twisted columns, moldings, niches, paintings with lively colors, gilding. Everything is done to be in opposition with Protestant authority. Seduction through art in service of faith. The Annecy Lake is considered jewel of the Savoie Alps. The slim outline of the Menton-Saint-Bernard castle, built between the 13th and 15th century, dominates the east bank of the lake. On the opposite bank, the Twink Castle watches over a narrowing edge of the lake since the 11th century. Located on an island linked to earth by a levee, it was modified during the 17th century and then the 19th century. Annecy is located at the northern extremity of the lake. The Pasquier Park is a place of relaxation and where people love to come for a stroll. Between the Pasquier Park and the Jardin d'Europe, the Amour Bridge stretches across the Vassé Channel. The old part of town is dominated by the imposing architecture of the castle. Former properties of the Counts of Geneva and Dukes of Genevois-Nemours, these buildings date from between the 12th century to the end of the 16th century. Devastated many times by fire, they were used as barracks until 1947. Today, the castle is owned by the municipality and has completely been renovated. In the old districts of Annecy, water flows everywhere. The Ile Palace, built during the 12th century on a natural island, used to be a prison, a court, and the monetary workshop of the Genevois. Partly pedestrian, the middle-aged alleys have remarkably been highlighted. Houses on arches, wells, bridges, lively colors. Italian influence is obvious. About 20 kilometers east of Annecy, Clusaz is the most important ski resort in the Arravie Massif. The village owes its name to the deep gorge located downstream. At the top of the slopes, you can admire the Mont-Blanc Massif above the Arravie Pass. Near Clusaz, the Arravie Pass is surrounded by the cornices of the northeast face of the Étal and by the indentation of the Arravie Gateway. The small chapel dedicated to Sainte marks the summit of the pass which links the Arravie Massif to the Arravie Valley. As the crow flies, 40 kilometers north of the Mont Blanc, Avoriaz is the furthest north we will go. With its incomparable bold architecture, Avoriaz is located at the core of the Porte du Soleil. Every winter in January, cinema is made king. After having received the Fantastic Film Festival for a long time, it now receives the French Film Festival. Launched after the First World War, Mégève, a Mont-Blanc ski resort, has always privileged tourism for society people. Located on a bank linking Valgaudemar to the Sallanches Basin, Mégève is the archetype of the ski resort village. At the feet of the Mont Blanc, the slopes of Mégève spread out on the Mont d'Arbois, Rochebrune and Jaillet. At an altitude of 1,000 meters between the peaks and the abrupt slopes of the Véran, Chamonix-Mont-Blanc spreads along the Arve River. Goethe in 1779, Chateaubriand in 1805, then Victor Hugo, Alexandre Dumas, Georges Sand, Napoleon III, Shelley, Byron all succumbed to the charm of Chamonix. Jacques Balmat and Dr. Paccard were the first ones to reach the top of the 4,807 meters of the Mont Blanc on August 8, 1786. Their feat had enormous repercussions. For a neophyte, the best view of the Mont Blanc and the Alps is offered when reaching the Midi Peak. The idea of building a cable car linking Chamonix to the Midi Peak dates from the beginning of the 20th century. In 1938, the first try failed. It is finally on June 24, 1955, that the highest cable car in the world opened to the public. The Midi Peak is also the starting point of one of the most sumptuous ski itineraries, the Vallée Blanche. The most spectacular path is certainly the descent by foot of the ridge, going from the cable car station to the projecting ledge where you can put your skis on. The beauty of the snow-capped peaks, crests, and summits is enough to justify the crazy expeditions of the mountaineers, these conquerors of uselessness. De Maison, Rebuffat, Bonatti, Seigneur, Whymper, Profit, Destivelle, Boivin, heroes of the Mont-Blanc modern mythology, have marked this place with their imprints. How many, famous or anonymous, have lost their lives for the glory of conquering a summit?